to another Suburban Som video. I am Scott, and with me on my right I have my wife Laura, who has been with us on a few tastings, and my best friend John and neighbor. Without him, this channel probably wouldn't have even got off the ground. He and I brainstormed this about a year ago, and he persisted, kept me on it, and finally it came to life. His creativity is in probably every one of these videos, so thank you, John, for coming. This is going to be part of our learning series, and we're going to call this one Tasting Wine Like a Pro. Now, this is going to be geared toward beginners of wine. Think about if you're going to a restaurant or drinking at a bar, you're on a date and want to impress somebody new, or maybe you're out with clients. You're going to want to at least kind of know what you're doing if you don't already. That's what this video is going to be all about. So we're going to, for the occasion, going to open what I would consider a middle-of-the-road bottle. This is from Kenneth Volk. It's a Cabernet Franc. It retails for about $30, so it's not what I would call a counter wine, which is something we keep for a Tuesday or something. That may be a $15, $20 bottle. This is a little higher than that, but certainly not $50, $80, $100 or more bottle. I think it'll do well. It's a red. I wanted a red for the visuals, and a Cab Franc certainly should have a lot of character. So that's kind of why I chose it. So the first thing we're going to do, I've already kind of taken the cork out, but what you might do, especially if you're at a restaurant, they're going to hand you the cork, and depending on who you ask, there's a lot of reasons for that, but what I look at is the end of the cork. I'm looking for the color. I don't want to see that permeating too far down the cork. I don't want to see a dry or cracked cork unless it's just a very old wine. And this is going to tell you that it was stored properly. It was stored on its side, because if it's stored upright for any length of time, this cork's going to dry up, air is going to get in, the wine's going to be bad. So that's the first thing you're going to look at. Second one is going to be visual. So we're going to go ahead and pour. And what John's already starting to do is very important. That is swirling. That's going to let air in, especially if this one hasn't had time to decant, or if they didn't use any sort of aerating tool. The next best thing you can do is what we're doing here, and that's swirling. This is getting air into the wine faster, and that's going to change it, and usually for the better. There's a trade-off for there. Obviously, if you leave this out for 2 days, that's way too much air. It's going to start to go downhill, but initially you're going to want some in there like that. So that's what we're doing, and then we're going to kind of look at the visuals. Now, if you look at it straight on, most red wines are going to be, they're going to be dark red, almost black. You're not going to be able to tell. So you might have seen people that are turning it on its side and wonder what they're doing there. Now, you may not have a white background to look at, but I've got a piece of paper here. Which, if you turn it near your side, what people are looking at is the very edge. And the reason for that is because at the edge, the wine is very thin, and you can kind of get a good feel for the exact color. What that's going to tell you is the approximate age. Now, I'm not saying I can tell you the year of this one. Just, is it a young, a mature, or maybe past its prime wine? So if at the edge there's some more purple than red, that's going to be an indication of a young wine. If it's a medium ruby color, that means it's more mature, a few years old. And in this case, that's what I'm seeing. This is a 14. That would put it at 6 years old. Then it'll start to turn more of a reddish brown color. That doesn't mean it's bad yet, but certainly the more brown it gets, the more past its peak it's going to be. So that's your visuals. You're also on the visual stages, you're looking for, as the wine makes its way down, you'll hear people call these tiers or legs. So that's going to be an indication of how much alcohol is in this. And I don't know if it's going to show up, but you can see legs all the way to the top dripping down. They're hanging on for dear life, so that's going to be an indication that you've got a lot more alcohol in this. Now, something lighter like a sparkling or a dry white, they have some legs, but they're going to fall down the glass a lot quicker. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to get an idea for the nose or the aroma of this. So we're going to get our noses in there pretty far and just take a couple of sniffs and just kind of get a feel for what we're smelling here. So I'll start with you, Laura. What are you getting out of that on the
I
nose?
smell cherry for sure. Maybe some spice on that one.
How about you, John?
I get a little red plum, and and this had a good nose the minute that we started swirling it. I was already
Yeah.
getting an aroma out of the glass.
And that's a good point, John. So what he's talking about there is it's a very fragrant wine. That's a good indication. Sometimes you'll pour it and it'll be a little skunky, a little funky. Not necessarily mean it's bad, but certainly it's something to watch out for. This one though smelled very good. A lot of red fruit hints. Maybe some cellar floor in there. Just hints of that. Now Cab Franc is generally a blending grape used in Bordeaux in California. It's a little unusual to see it as a standalone, not totally impossible. In this case, the producer talks about it on the back and said that this particular vintage, they were pretty happy with the fruit and decided to use some for blending and actually some as a pure Cab Franc bottling. So I'm looking forward to trying that.
Hey Scott, while we talked about nose, I notice people smell the cork sometimes when they're in a restaurant. You talked about the visual cue. Why would they be smelling the cork?
Well, some people believe that you can get an indication of the wine by smelling the cork. Actually, I'm not so sure that you can. There's a little bit of wine residual on there, but you're really better off getting it out of the glass than from the cork. Certainly, if you were to smell it when you're in a restaurant, no one's going to stop you or think worse of you, but you really want to get your nose from the actual wine. So let's go ahead and give this a try. And then I'm going to talk about what we're looking for out of the tasting.
It's jammy.
Now you're going to want to let that coat your entire palate. Swirl it around the sides of your tongue. And let it ease down your throat. Now when it comes to your flavor characteristics, you're thinking of things like how fruity it is. Is it sweet or is it dry? Tannic. So what that means, tannins are the excess materials besides the meat of the grape. So the skins, the seeds, the stems. How much of that extra material they put in with the grape mash and how long they let it stay in there. That's going to give it a tannic feel, which is also character. Now tannic, you can tell how tannic it is how much it makes your mouth pucker. So in this case, this one I would say definitely has moderate tannins, but I would not say on the excess side. Another way to think of tannins is if you're a tea or a coffee drinker and you drink that like a black tea or black coffee straight, no sugar, cream, any kind of thing like that. That's going to be what a tannic feel is going to be like. Also, what you're looking for is acidity, and I know you might think, oh, acidity, I don't want acid in my wine. That's not what we're talking about here. Acidity is like the mouth-watering aspect of the wine. It has to have some acidity. If it has zero acidity, it's going to be kind of a flat wine, and you don't want that. Or if it's no acidity but a lot of fruit, it's going to be kind of flabby, very simple, and you don't want that either. Acidity is more important in some wines than others. Certainly in a sparkling wine, you're going to want some acidity, but in all wines, you're going to want at least some level of that. So in that one, we're getting dark fruit. John, it smelled plum. I'm also tasting plum on that. There is hints of oak.
You get a little white pepper.
And there's some spiciness. I couldn't really place it, but it's got a spicy kick to it.
It's like jammy at the front and then spicy at the end.
So when we're talking about a wine's character and complexity, what we mean there is if you get something different with each sip, that's more of an indication of complexity. So a simple wine, you might get some berry, maybe some oak, and it's going to be the same from the first sip to the bottom of the bottle. A more complex wine is going to have flavors that you'll get at first, some berry, and then you'll sip a few later, you'll start to get some subtle nuances of some cedar, different kind of wood, maybe some stone. Then you'll get to the bottom of it, and as the wine gets more air and changes temperature, you'll get more and more subtle flavors with that. And that again is what we're talking about when we mean complexity. Now, when it comes to mouthfeel, that is really, there's three grades of that. There's light, there's medium, and full. And a good analogy for that is like milk and cream. So you've got a non-fat or low-fat milk. You're going to drink that, and it's going to kind of give you that light mouthfeel. If you've got a full-fat milk, it's going to be medium. And if you're drinking straight cream, that's going to be like a full mouthfeel wine, like you would have on some of the bigger, bolder reds. I'd put this one kind of in the middle between medium and full. And kind of what goes hand in hand with that is finish. There's also three grades of that. There's kind of short, there's lingering, there's everlasting. Short pretty much means you take a drink and it's evaporated right off your tongue pretty quick, and you almost forgot what you tasted. Then you kind of got in the middle, where maybe it sticks around for a good 5 or 10 seconds. Like in this case, I just took a drink about 10 seconds ago. I can still kind of tell you what's there. And then there's, of course, there's everlasting. You can go 30 seconds or more, still on your palate, still discernible taste. So what are you guys thinking as far as the range on this one for as far as finish?
I'd say it's in the middle, lingering.
Yeah, I get a good taste of it.
I would agree with that. I'd say it's a good 10, somewhere between 10 and 20 seconds. And lastly, we're going to talk about balance of the wine. And balance is simply how the different characteristics of the wine, tannin, sweetness, acidity, and alcohol all play with each other. If one or more of those stands out, then the wine's kind of out of balance. In other words, you take a drink and it's way too sweet or way too dry or way too tannic or acidic or alcohol. So if it's going to be a strong alcohol wine, maybe too much, might burn on the way down your throat. That's going to stand out, and I would say the wine would be out of balance. It's going to be in harmony when all of those things are aligned. You have them all, but you don't sit there and point to one and say, oh, that one, this wine is really this or really that. In this case, I would definitely say this wine's in pretty good balance.
Yeah.
Does anything stand out with you guys?
No,
It's a good one.
Yeah.
I like it.
And again, if it's a really tannic wine or maybe a too acidic, it doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. It could just be that it's too young, needs more time in the bottle. Some wines weren't designed to be open 2 years after they were put in there. They need a little more time to mature. Those tannins need time to calm down. And usually a winemaker will tell you that in their recommendations as to when the wine's ready to be open. But anyway, let's get our last impressions of this. I would definitely consider this, another term you'll hear is approachable. You can consider approachable by the nose, which this definitely has a nice nose. And the taste itself is, I'd say, appealing to a wide range of palates. And at $30, it's not terribly expensive. It's kind of like I said, for us, it's a middle of the road bottle. But Cab Franc is a nice varietal when they do it right. And in this case, I think the producer got this one right. They were, like I said earlier, pretty proud of this fruit this year, and it shows, I think, in this bottling. Last impressions?
I like Cab Franc, and this is a good Cab Franc, whether I'm having it with dinner or just having it poolside.
I like it. I would buy it again.
Well, there you go. So if you have any questions about wine tasting or the basics of wine and you would like to ask me down in the comments, please feel free. I'd be happy to answer those. Anyway, I am Scott, and this is Laura and John. with Suburban Som, and this is what we're drinking today.